It's a very good, easy, inexpensive mod to do. And the next thing to do, I think I'm going to pick this one right here. It's the Orange Drop 102, 1000 picofarad. It's just solder it onto the back of the pot. That's real easy to do. Let's take a look. Alright, so I've got everything prepared here to solder the capacitor to the back of the bridge volume pot. That's this pot right here. And you can see the pot has 3 lugs on it, one of which is ground, and you can tell that because on this one there's a wire running from the lug right to the back of the pot. There's also this black lead running to the inside of the guitar, which is grounding the bridge. The other 2 wires here, one is coming from the bridge pickup, that's this thick black one, and that's going to this lug, and the middle lug is heading off to the 3-way switch. And you want to connect the capacitor right across those 2 lugs, not the ground one, the 2 signal lugs. Now this orange drop I'm going to use is a little bit big. Depending on the size of the cavity in your guitar, you may need to choose a smaller capacitor, like a physically smaller capacitor, like a small ceramic. In this case I've got plenty of room, so I'm going to use this one, and I like the way it sounds. So the first thing to do is to clip the leads to length so that you can get in here easily. If you were starting with a brand new pot, the lugs would be open and you'd be able to leave the leads long and just sort of bend them through the holes, and then you can clip them off later. But since this already has wires attached and there's already solder on there, I'm just going to clip them first, and I'm going to use these locking pliers to hold them in place just as a third hand while I tin the leads. Now, tinning is a simple matter of applying a little bit of solder to the leads. Now, capacitors can be damaged by the heat of the soldering iron, so I'm going to use a little alligator clip here to act as a heat sink, connected across the lead. As the heat travels up the lead, it'll pass out through the alligator clip instead of going into the body of the capacitor. So I got a soldering iron here. This is just a simple 20-watt soldering iron and some 6040 rosin core solder. And what you do is put the tip of the iron onto the lead and heat it up for just a sec, and then touch the solder to it and run it over it, and should flow right over it. Nice and simple. I'm going to take the alligator clip and move it to the other lead and do the same thing. Just like that. And I can feel the capacitor didn't even get hot, so the heat went into the alligator clip. Alright, so the next step is to take the cap, and we're going to solder it onto these 2 leads. Figure out a good placement. This may just take a little experimenting to see what works best. You may need to also bend these lugs a little bit just to make them easier to get to. You want to be careful not to melt the wires of the leads that are already going to it. And again, I'm going to use the alligator clip to act as a heat sink. And I'm also going to use the alligator clip to hold it. And I'm going to take the soldering iron, and I'm just going to put a little blob of solder on the end of it like this. So it's sitting there, smoking away, and reach down in here, being careful not to touch anything else, and just touch it there, hold it for a second, let go. You got to be very still, and what you want to see is that the solder dries nice and shiny and doesn't turn like a matte gray color. Matte gray would indicate a cold solder joint, which isn't good. You want a nice, clean, shiny chrome look. I'm going to move my alligator clip over to the other lead and line it up. A little more solder again. Lay it down in here, just right on the lug. Put my iron to it. See it all melt together. And then get out of there. You should see a nice shiny joint again. And I do, so there it is. So once you're done, You get a little tug, make sure it's on there okay. Now, what you might want to do, depending on... I cut these leads a little long so it would be easier to see while we were working here. You probably want to make them a little shorter than that. What you can do is take some needle nose pliers when you're done and put a bend in it so that it's out of the way. And you're done. Simple as that. Then we want to do the same thing to the other two volume pots. You may choose different capacitances for those depending on how they sounded when you were experimenting. But that's it. Treble bleed on a volume pot. Give it a try and let me know how it goes.